It's about following through. Very often, just getting to the point of doing the thing is such a big deal that we like to flop afterwards. Okay, I did it. No, because what you've done, particularly if it's bold, is going to have all kinds of consequences. And so to be effective, you've got to work with those. And it will have positive reactions, unexpected, like the quote I read. It will have unexpected negative reactions. It will offer you stepping stones. So let me ask you a question. When you do something, when you act, or do something bold, what happens in the very next second? Just in your own experience. This is tough too, but if anybody has a sense of it, I'd be curious. The actual next second.
Oh my God, what have I done?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a doubt.
Yep. Great.
Sometimes it's relief.
Yep.
Exhilaration.
Yep.
I should have done that ages ago.
Yep.
What was I waiting for?
Great. Thank you. Didn't have to fish long for that. So there's what we could call the inner voices, habitual voices, and there's a sense of relief that we kind of did the right thing. So let's talk about the inner voices, the oh my God, what have I done? And the beginning to sort of try to pull it back. Or there's another version of that, which is, yeah, I really nailed that, which is just the opposite kind of neurosis. But the point is that there is, because what we have done is we've exposed ourselves completely in doing the action. We're in a very fraught situation, and it will stir up our habits powerfully. And we need to recognize that, because if we don't, we will be blind to the actual feedback of our action. And a very common one is that inner critic. I blew it. So that's one kind of feedback. Then there's another kind of feedback, which is things unexpectedly happen that come to our aid. But if we make a bold move, we also arouse the antibodies of the system we're working in. Now, when we're talking about systems, they're like ecologies. You know, a human organization is like a pond. Some other word, pond scum, came to mind. Go away. It's like a pond in the sense that, you know, if you introduce, like in the system of the pond, introduce a new small fish or even a kind of water plant, the whole ecology will change in ways you might not expect. Not just one little area, but everything interacts with everything else. And systems work to maintain a status quo. So when we perturb, make a bold move or a bold statement, there will be reactions. And typically, these antibodies have a number of different forms. People will attack us. They'll try to talk us out of what we're doing. They'll try to seduce us out of what we're doing. They'll try to buy us off, whatever that means. But it will happen. So for instance, you, let's say, go and, in the personal example, quit your job. And you proudly announce, I did it, I quit my job, at which point your parents tell you you're crazy. Your friends say, how can you do that? Your boss calls you up and said, you know, come back. I'll let you work 3/4 time. Another friend calls you and says, let's go to Thailand for a year. Very typical, though, that things begin to happen. In the example that I gave in the business, you decide finally that you've got to fire this person. You do it, you have a difficult conversation, immediately says, I'm going to sue you. You'll be hearing from my lawyer the next day. And you think, oh my God, what have I done? Did I think it through properly? You freak out. So these are the kind of things that we can anticipate. And if we go to sleep on the watch and first of all ignore them or forget that they're the immediate consequence of this kind of action, an inevitable consequence, then we get misled. And then what we're trying to accomplish does not become as effective. So at this point, the completing stage is again not so much doing anything, but it's aware of the places where you can get trapped. It's sticking with your original intention. And it has the quality of, in the Shambhala tradition, they talk about holding your seat. It's like riding a horse that's, spirited and will buck occasionally, and you're in the saddle and you're not freaking out. You're sort of working with the horse, but in each case holding your posture. And your posture in this case means going forward, eyes open, dealing with what's coming up. And so the notion here is of steadfastness. Steadfastness is a little better word than steady, I think, because at least for me it has more the implication that you're working. The steadfastness, has a kind of gritty quality. And again, it has a quality of saying no. You're saying no to being seduced out of what you started. If you're the kind of person who likes to please everybody, or wants everybody to be happy, this is a difficult one for you. Because you can be just grabbed by that hook and pulled right off of what you're doing, because everybody will not be pleased. But remember that people's reactions are also temporary. That's them getting triggered. And that often those reactions, as you hold your seat, those reactions will just settle down. So in the work example, for instance, you're freaking out, you're up all night, you're thinking, maybe we should give them a consulting contract, or, but then you realize, what am I doing? I'm just driving myself crazy. I really did the work on this, entered, explored, this is it. We're sticking with it. And you relax. You come into the office and you've got a line at your door. And you have people who are there freaked out. Like this guy is the only person who knows, the back end of the software program, and how we're going to find a replacement, and we have competition, whatever it is. But what's interesting is if you hold your seat and you're calm and don't sort of say, really? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Then the other people calm down as well. So it's the same principle, again, is that you hold your seat, hold your posture, don't give in to your own freak out and everyone else's freak outs. Come along. And that's a really interesting leadership principle. In some situations, the best advice for leaders is to do very little, not to be reactive, and particularly don't react to these nervous fluctuations, in other people's freakouts, or your own for that matter. So the job here is to be calm and steady and confident, which doesn't mean not being freaked out. It means not being freaked out by being freaked out. Does that make sense? Expect to be freaked out. It's fine. It doesn't amount to much, actually. It's just like, some kind of gas bubble.
If you have someone you can kind of vent with, I have the situation at work,
Totally.
and she's the day supervisor,
Yeah.
and we're just cleaners, but there's a situation going on now where they've tried to get rid of somebody, but the union and blah blah, and another coworker just says there's nothing we can do about it, and it was like, thank you so much, Aaron, because we were just livid. It was like, we did this and that when the company changed over and whatever. Anyway, but yeah, she'll come up and say, rah, 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 and I say, well, okay, rah, 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 and then it's like, can I buy you a tea and a muffin or a coffee or whatever? Do you need? Nope, that's fine. But off we go and do our work, but it's just this. laughs. I said, yeah, yeah. Cindy and I had a talk this morning. She didn't eat the tea and the muffin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, having friends for all of us is so helpful. Somebody who, you know, you have some kind of loyalty with and who sees you from another perspective and can give you honest feedback, that's golden. Now, holding your seat at this stage depends on doing the earlier stages properly. So if you've entered, you know, notice your preconceptions, not get immediately hooked by them, not been reactive to the situation. Really explore it honestly, somewhat fearlessly with yourself. Act it cleanly. Then you can really trust holding your seat at this stage. And you can trust that what's coming up, you know, you can notice what's coming up that's just trying to knock you off course. Now, having done that, then you can see actual feedback. Because of course there's feedback about what the next step is, about ways you can course correct. Absolutely. It doesn't mean that what you've done is perfect at all. It means it's trustworthy as a next step. It's a trustworthy place to operate from. And then the feedback will course correct for you. So often what happens in working with anything that's living as opposed to a machine is that you want to go from here to there, and this is what Micheal was mentioning about taking small steps, is that you go here and you see, oh, okay, that tells me now I need to go here, and you go here, okay. And you actually, you know, this is not true. Remember I said one way of hesitating is you're trying to accomplish everything at once. So a useful suggestion is take small steps and then learn from them. Because they will perturb the system and they will show you more clearly, once the dust settles, what the next step is. And by the way, if you find you've made some really big mistake, all of a sudden you're looking back, you say, oh shit, you know, I just got off on the wrong foot in this whole thing. You can always start again. You just start from the beginning. You just start with entering processing. So you're never doomed in this kind of way of thinking. So this is the question at this stage is, am I sticking with my intention? Am I holding my seat here? This is after acting. And again, you can't, you know, the notion that you just do your action and then somehow things will take care of themselves. You need to be a little more awake than that to work with it. Okay, so then the action is completed at some point. And it's time to close this whole chapter, to let go. And how do you know when that is? Well, sometimes it just lets go of us. And we wake up and we feel okay, you know, great. And sometimes we begin to feel that we're somewhat trapped in the past. We're fighting our past battles. We're trapped in the intensity of what we've been through, either mentally or actually. You know, I'm going to get them. How are they doing it to me? Or, why was I smart? Can't believe it. I wonder if they'll recognize me at the next awards dinner. Maybe I should have an awards dinner so all the people who appreciate me. Whatever. So you can feel either, you know, in some way you're still trapped in that. And what you might feel is that a disconnect with what's going on around you, which is another sign that you're focused, stuck on what's happening. So the really good advice here is don't look back. It sounds simple, but it's actually quite profound. So letting go here is not just the common notion of letting go is we're just kind of releasing or flopping or kind of choosing to ignore something. And it's not that. It's not just about letting things dribble on into the next thing. Quite the opposite. Letting go here is a very definite, energetic thing. Because you've been through a lot, possibly. And there's a lot of energy. There's been energy of uncertainty, anxiety, determination, persistence. There's a lot that's been called up in your system. And the notion of letting go is actually gathering that energy and kind of releasing it, almost, you could almost say riding that energy into the next situation. So in other words, there's a sense of delight and vigor through this. And in traditional societies, of course, transitions are often marked with ritual. And this is exactly what we're talking about here. Ritual and celebration. A sense of sort of gathering your life to one point and then giving you the energy to step forward and go forward. So we're talking about a sense of celebration and joy in the letting go stage, and appreciation. So it's a notion of appreciating what we've accomplished, taking a moment. You know, it's again, people say, you know, take a moment and appreciate what you've done. Smell the roses. It's that. It's not just, okay, finished with that, on to the next thing, but a stopping. Again, we stopped at the beginning and entering, and it's stopping here. But there's a more vigorous quality of now we're ready to go forward to the next thing, and there's all of this kind of wind at our backs. And by the way, that applies whether we've been successful or not successful. Because we can appreciate our failures as well. I haven't really talked much about sense of humor, but it's very important. And this will guarantee, I'll give you a guarantee. I guarantee you that if you stick with mindfulness practice long enough, it will develop your sense of humor, because you won't have a choice. Because you're continually confronted with there's this and there's that. There's my confusion, there's my inspiration, there's action, there's mindfulness, and somehow we have to go forward with all those. And the way that we go forward is some kind of appreciation and some humor and not taking ourselves so seriously. And that kind of lubricates everything. Everything becomes possible.
Can there be a sense of sadness, momentary
Yes.
sadness at this letting go?
Yes.
I'll give you two quick examples. One, I'm thinking of my children graduating from university, and a great thing has happened, and I'm letting them go. It's time. Off you go, and find your way in the world. We've given you all the tools we can, and I am very proud and elated. But there is just a sense of sadness for a little while, and the same as if you quit your job and get a new one, or you know you've done it. I've quit my job, and it was the best thing, but there were some good memories there at some point. So there is a little bit of sadness. So do we not is that not a good thing, or that's a bad thing, or we shouldn't let it in, or what?
Well, you know, in these traditions we don't talk about good and bad, but I'd say it's a wonderful thing. It's the special teaching of the Shambhala tradition is the notion that the most genuine aspect of the human being is sadness and joy together. And they talk about the sad and tender heart is the way of being a warrior in the world. So sadness is very much in the picture.
I'm not talking about dragging through like
No,
3
no,
years
no, I
later.
know.
I'm still
No.
sad you're gone, because I'm not.
No, there's a...
You know, like it's just, I've worked so hard to accomplish these things. So there is, maybe sadness is the wrong word?
No.
Melancholy,
No.
memory?
Yes.
Or-
Tenderness. If there isn't some sadness somewhere, it's not trustworthy. That's what keeps us from making this into some kind of mechanistic, 5 steps of how to do something business. If it's human, there's always that. So.
I cut you off, you were gonna say
No,
something great, I know you were.
You stopped me in a very good way, actually. There's not much more to say, really. I think I'll stop there. I mean, I have a few more things to say, but you made a very nice, perfect point. So, we have 8 minutes, we can talk. See if this sort of illuminate anything for you in terms of your own way of doing things. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just review the questions to it. So you can boil this down to simply saying at the beginning, am I pausing? The second step of exploration, am I working with my fear and allowing myself to be curious? And then the third step, am I being caught in hesitation or impulse in terms of acting? The fourth step, am I holding my seat? And the fifth step, did I let go? So if one of those resonates for you, great.
Michael, I want to ask you, because when we set up this lecture series, the sort of the overall theme was mindfulness in society.
Yeah.
And we were particularly thinking about society in Nova Scotia and all the challenges that we as Nova Scotians are facing, and we hear all kinds of reports about what's happening and so forth. And it seems obvious that what you're talking about is kind of critical to the process of us working with as a society. How do you see this translating in so that we actually, our leaders and all kinds of levels in society here actually are using this kind of process?
Prayer. Well, I mean, so many of us have our own, areas that we're attending, ways of approaching this. So I don't know, David. I'm not sure that I have a good response. I can tell you what I'm doing, but does that work?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Well, it seems to me that a way I see into mindfulness for society as a whole is by starting with the question of why is it so difficult to do the things that are why is it so difficult to make the obvious solutions to problems that we have? We all agree on something. And why is it so difficult to get it done? And I think that's a question that resonates more broadly than saying, come and learn mindfulness. But if you start asking that question, you then come to realizing that, well, one of the reasons is because of this systems idea, that obvious solutions, quote obvious solutions, are not that obvious once you start looking at all the vested interests and connections and how things are going to respond and react. And so that takes you to realizing that if you're going to work with human beings and society or organizations, you need to have certain kinds of attitudes to do it effectively. you need to be able to tolerate uncertainty. You need to be able to listen. You need to be patient. You need to have a sense of humor, of course. And you need to see your own biases and realize that you are also part of the system you're working in. So if you take those things, you say, well, sure, but in order to develop those, you've got to work with the habits that you have of not doing them. And to me, that leads you right into mindfulness, practice of some sort. You can't really work in a system effectively and be mindless. You can if you're just putting parts back into a machine. You can't do it with human beings because you always have to be awake, because the system is continually changing. So you always have to be awake and receptive, and that takes practice. So that leads you to mindfulness, and then the next thing is that you're never working alone in trying to change the system. You're always working with others, because others are the system you're working in. And then it takes you into needing to appreciate listening, maybe more effectively, and also how to collaborate. And how to collaborate also means, how do I attract allies, and how do I work creatively with diversity? And I think in our province, there's a real tendency towards isolation and atomization of things we're doing. You know, I think a lot of us are working in areas where we don't know that there's other people working right alongside doing the same thing and also feeling isolated and atomized. So those three things, in my way of thinking, systems thinking, leading to mindfulness, and listening and collaboration, are a way to begin to get this kind of view out further than it currently is. And then I think we have to, as a New Yorker, I say, have to be a little bolder and more outspoken, not taking the crap that we take. That's not speaking as a meditation.